I'm pretty excited to be down here at Solar and Sat and finally get enough power in the 200 series. Now I'm not talking about motor power, I'm talking about solar and electrical power. There's going to be heaps of it.
Hey mate.
How you been, mate?
Yeah, been good. Righto. So, this has an awesome system in it that does not work.
But it's awesome still, is it?
It works for what it was designed for.
That's fair.
But the way Paula and I are using this vehicle, we just do not have enough power. So it comes down to, this was built to tour, it's got a fridge and a little bit of lights and stuff like that.
Yep.
But we're charging cameras, we need induction cooktop because we live on the road and well, we often work on the road, I should say. So we're just needing a whole heap more power than the vehicle's got.
Yep.
Obviously weight is an issue because we do load this space up quite a bit.
Of course.
And therefore lithium makes sense. Yeah, so I need help to know what I can put in here that's going to meet our needs.
So you want more power to run more stuff, and you want to be lighter.
Yeah, well, I know lithium's lighter, so I figured that I'll come and talk to you guys about lithium, and then you'd help me with the rest of it. Sometimes we do park up for a couple of days, like if we're just filming local and we don't even start the car. So obviously we'd want some solar capacity as well. So
makes sense. Well, how old's the system as a whole?
Well, the vehicle's 2014 and it would have been put in then.
Yeah, right. Okay, so you've got some decent longevity out of it.
Yeah, like it's been a great system. There's nothing actually wrong with it. It all works as designed. It just doesn't do enough of what we need. So.
Hey, that's fair enough. You need more power, you need more power. But I guess that brings me to the next question. 10 years old system, do you remember the specs on it? Like what sort of battery capacity are we talking in there?
Since I've owned the vehicle not quite a year, I've never even opened this cabinet, but it's got new AGMs in there.
Yep.
I'm not sure what brand.
Two of them, 200 amp hour, 240 amp hour perhaps. Panels on the roof, how many
Yeah,
you
there's
got?
two panels up there. I think they're 350 watts.
Total? Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So there's a reasonable amount of stuff in there. For running a fridge and some lights, it's probably sufficient. But you wouldn't really stretch it much past that, though.
No, well, we're now running Starlink, which wasn't even invented when this was out, and that certainly, that draws 4 or 5 amps, is it?
If you're running on 240, yeah, it would pull about 4 or 5 amps fairly continuously, so arguably more than your fridge.
Right.
So straight away, you're already doubling your consumption. And then obviously with 2 AGMs in there, to achieve reasonable longevity, you try to discharge them down to about that 50%. So with 240 amp hour, it's 120 amp hour of storage, which, you know, if you're using 5 amps,
not much.
5 amps an hour off your Starlink, and then let's just say another 3.5, 4 amps off your fridge.
So I thought, so I'm thinking like they're like a 240 amp battery, but that you're saying I don't even get that much out of them realistically.
So that is kind of a trick with AGMs. So depending on the longevity you're aiming for, that'll reflect how deeply you want to discharge them. So there's a little bit of a science to it, I suppose. A lot of people just go ahead and say, hey, 50% is a good rule of thumb.
Right.
And I'd argue that's an okay rule of thumb if you're aiming for about that 5-6 years design life. You can discharge them down further than that, down to maybe that 20%. But you start to get to around that 11 volt sort of mark, and then stuff doesn't tend to work quite as well.
I'm regularly running out of power, so I guess that's 0%.
So down to like 10.5 volts. That's basically that's flat.
Yeah, I've run it down where things are starting to turn off.
Yeah, that's fair. So with AGMs, basically the deeper you discharge them every time, that pretty much is eating into their design life. So,
oh wow, okay.
So if you regularly flatten them down to almost nothing, you'll only get a year or so out of your batteries.
Okay.
If you flatten them only to halfway, which is why everyone tends to say that.
Well, now you can see the problem I've probably got.
Yeah, so I do imagine there's probably not much left in them in the sense that, sure.
They're probably only a year old.
Oh, okay.
So I hope I haven't beat on them too hard.
Yeah, well, there's only one way to find that out, and it's to test them. But
yeah. Okay. What should we do to get a good system into the vehicle that's going to give us some design life? We sort of see this vehicle as having a minimum 5-year lifespan for us.
Yep. I guess what I normally do with these sort of systems is we start with a load and then we work backwards from there. So what's probably the biggest appliance you want to use in terms of power at once? Are we talking induction?
Probably induction cooktops.
That's probably the big one.
And that'll be, you know, just because of space, we probably won't be carrying an electric kettle, for example, so it'll be used to boil some water for a coffee.
Makes sense.
Things like that.
They're normally like, especially if you've got a double plate, they're normally about 2400 watt,
okay.
Which straight away rules out your standard 2000 watt inverter. So 2400 watts means a 3000 watt inverter.
Okay.
Or if we're sticking to Victron, a 3 kVA inverter. 3 kVA inverter basically requires, at a minimum, a battery that can discharge 250 amps an hour. So that's peak at once. So straight away, that's about, I'd say, 4 times what these batteries are probably capable of. Maybe 5 times the amount of, like, within their specs, I suppose.
Yeah,
so a big key thing, a lot of people go, oh, lithium, it's lightweight, has more capacity, lasts longer. That's all true and important. But on a job like this, it's not actually the reason we do it. The main reason we do it is a lithium battery can discharge without damaging the cells and keeping its design life reasonable, 1-to-1 pretty much ratio wise. So if you have a 200 amp hour lithium battery, you can normally discharge it at 200 amps. If you have a 300 amp hour lithium battery, you can normally discharge it at 300 amps.
Wow.
Providing that the internals, the BMS, the bus bars, all that sort of stuff's up to the task.
Yeah. Correct me if I'm wrong, I'm no expert on this stuff, but a lithium battery is a very different, although we, as a consumer, I look at it and see just a box, a rectangular box with a positive and negative terminal. But inside that box in a lithium battery, there's a bunch of electronics which isn't in these AGMs.
Yes, so you're right there. They follow a similar sort of principle in terms of how they're sort of put together with separate cells inside, wired up to get a higher voltage. But I guess lithium batteries, as you say, have more in them. So they've got a BMS in there, for one, which is your battery management system.
Right.
And what that basically controls is it controls protection of the cells, and it also ensures that the cells are balanced and that you can use the capacity that you've got inside the battery. But I guess the biggest thing, at least in terms of designing a system like this, is what its rating is in terms of how much power it can give.
Right.
So you might have a 600 amp hour lithium battery or a 1000 amp hour lithium battery, but if your BMS can only give you 100 amps before it turns off or overheats or whatever, you're not going to be able to run a 3000 watt inverter.
Right, okay.
So you need a battery that's got enough capacity for one, but then it needs to have that kick to give it that discharge. So that's having a high current BMS inside of it.
Right.
So in your case, generally a 300 amp hour battery with at a minimum a 250 amp BMS, that's going to be what you need to run a 3000 watt inverter.
So we've talked a little bit about what we're going to pull out of these batteries, but obviously we need to put power into them at some point. Now, for me, because we do remote touring, I'm kind of a bit reluctant to go aftermarket alternators on the vehicle and charge the batteries. Like, I know you can get upgraded alternators and all that, but if I have a failure out in Alice Springs and Terrain Tamer, for example, it's like we've got an alternator on the shelf. They're not going to have an upgraded alternator. They're going to have a factory 200 series alternator. So I'd kind of like to stay with that. I don't even know if you're happy with that, but I'd like to. But what other options have we got for getting power into this system? Obviously solar.
So there's a few things there. I guess with the upgraded alternators, personally I'm a huge fan of them, just because of the direct performance you'll get out of them. By having an upgraded alternator, you can charge incredibly quickly, using the power of your engine, obviously. But you are right in the sense that, you won't find many places that are stocking upgraded alternators, which means if you're out in the sticks and you need one, it does kind of bug you a little bit there. If you're trying to avoid that, it means you're going to have to make up for it in other ways. So lots of solar, there's an option there. Generator is an option, but we try to avoid that for the most part. Otherwise, when you do have the option to plug into mains, which if you're out super remote, you generally don't, but if you do, having a big battery charger so that you can maybe plug in for an hour, put in a whole bunch of charge, unplug and continue on your way, that can be a good option. But at least in your particular case, you're pretty well set up to have a whole bunch of solar. You've got a huge canopy here, it hangs off the front there, we've got heaps of roof real estate. If you're trying to avoid alternator charging, this is pretty much the ideal setup to have for it, because we have a whole heap of room for solar up there. I haven't measured it as of yet, but I'm going to guess that you'll get 600 to 800 watts up there. Which that's about 40, 50 amps an hour in terms of solar charge. So if we put a 600 amp hour battery in here, and I'm driving down the road and I've got the solar charging, it's a nice sunny day, and I've got the alternator charging, how long is that going to take to charge that up roughly? So being that we're sticking to the standard alternator, we'll be putting in a 50 amp DC-DC. The 200 series are pretty much good for almost all of that. So for round figures, we'll just say 50. And let's assume that we've got 800 watts up there and you've got a good sunny day. It's also giving you 50. Because they're two separate units, you'll get the full 100 amps combined. Which means if you're driving along in perfect conditions, you're charging 100 amps an hour. If you're dead flat with a 600 amp hour battery, 6 hours from flat to full. And a lot of people listen to that and go, hey, 6 hours is a fair while to charge your battery. But think of it more like this way. In 1 hour of driving, you've put in more battery capacity than you probably currently have.
Probably.
And
that's true.
Just because being that you've been using them pretty far, I doubt they're giving you the 120 amps of capacity, 120 amp hour, I should say.
The other factor that comes to my mind is the solar panels are charging whether I'm driving or not. So if I've got 8 hours of daylight, it's 8 times 50 for that, and then I might only need the 4 hours of drive time.
Yep.
Generally speaking, if we're working, we're going to get that sort of drive time over the day.
Yeah, exactly. If we're working on the full rated capacity of the array, which would be about 50 amps, providing we get 800 watts up there, I generally like to work on 5 hours of perfect sun. Right. You will get like more hours of sunlight than that, but only so many of them will be perfect. And I like to think the average is 5 makes for a pretty good rule of thumb.
Rule of thumb, okay.
Yeah, so 250 amps of charge, basically.
Does it sound reasonable to you for this system that we just go with that, leave the stock alternator, put what solar we can on top, and let's see if it works? Is it the sort of thing where it's easily upgradable later if I find that's not working for me and we need to upgrade the alternator?
So you certainly can upgrade it later. If you just do a basic alternator upgrade and then install another 50 amp DC-DC, or maybe even a third, that's a very, very easy way to get a sizable upgrade.
Okay.
I don't know, a lot of our bigger setups like trucks and stuff, direct alternator charging is the way that's when you see hundreds of amps of charge going in per hour.
Wow.
But that's a whole different approach, for
okay.
sure. It's completely different.
I think I'd like to stay with that more conservative approach initially.
Yep, smaller DC-DC setup if you want another one later on, especially with the release of the new Victron 50 amp DC-DCs this big.
Okay.
If we put in one for now and you want another 50 amps of charge later on,
we've got
alternator upgrade. Second one, they link together, they output like 100.
Yeah, right. So then we could theoretically go to 150 coming in. That's
exactly
4 hours we'd have a charge.
Without running things like air conditioners, welders, all that sort of stuff, that will be more than sufficient. If you want to run a pair of fridges, you'd be laughing. Yeah,
well, we will, on certain trips, we do run 2 fridges.
Cool.
So we'll have like a freezer here and then the fridge over there.
Yep.
Then we've got the induction, then we've got the lights, then we're charging cameras and drones and all the rest of it.
Yep.
And
yeah, well, I mean, at least with this particular setup, even if you're running a pair of fridges, if we do get that 800 watts up there, or even 600, the solar itself would almost be enough for everything, depending on how much you use the inverter. Yep. But in terms of just using the fridges, by the time we get that much solar on there and that battery, if you parked it in our car park and left it there and came back in 2 months, you could walk in there and grab a cold beer out of the fridge.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah,
that's cool.
So no stress there. It's going to come down to how hard we work the inverter at the end of the day.
Yeah, okay, so that's really going to be the thing. Okay, well, I'm excited.
That's it.
I am really excited.
What I reckon we do now is we maybe grab Adam. He's going to be the one doing most of the hard work on this particular job.
I like Adam already.
And we'll see what he might have in mind with this, hey?
Okay, let's do it.
Cool. All right, Adam. This is where the meat and potatoes of the system's going to end up. So obviously you can see where the old battery bank is.
Yep.
Pretty much the new one's going to have to go in the same spot, although we're probably going to need a new enclosure. Definitely going to need a new enclosure. Multi+2 going up in here. Obviously just to fit it up in that gap up top, hopefully use up some of the wasted
utilise
space.
it, so yeah.
Yep. Orion 50 amp reg.
Yep.
You're going to have the Servo GX, all the other shunts, the links distribution unit perhaps, or maybe it'll end up being a fuse block, like that multi-current fuse block. But pretty much we're happy to leave the details in your hands. They just need some outlets here for some camera charging and whatnot. But really, the bulk of the access points are going to be on the other side. Yep. So that's where they got their cooking, their fridge, all that sort of gear. If you like, let's go have a look.
Go and have a look.
Sweet. Okay, this is where all the monitoring stuff's going to go, mate.
Right.
Obviously, you can see up here, they got their 600 watt inverter, some GPOs and whatnot. As I'm sure you can appreciate, that'd be fairly inconvenient if they plan to induction cooktop and whatnot.
Yeah, exactly,
So some fixed GPOs.
Yeah, GPOs over here.
Probably a couple USBs.
Touch 70,
exactly.
switching up there. Yep.
You're on the money. Fascia, have everything up there so they can see what's going on and access it easily. So this basically is their access side.
Yeah, some phone charging, etc. So yeah.
The other side will have the system in it, but this will be where they use it primarily. So
yeah. Excellent.
Awesome.
Get into it.
I'll leave it in your hands.
Hey, there is something labelled.
There is actually bugger all behind the wall. That's pretty much nearly spot on, so I'm going to actually try and fit the battery in there right now.
Even though the battery is lithium and comparatively light Well, if we had 600 amps of lead acid or AGM batteries, it would be 2 or 3 times the weight of this. We've still mounted it down low and as far forward as possible, but in a really secure location.
Once you get it in there, it might not come out real easy.
Oh shit, no.
So what that means is we're not chewing into our load carrying space, but it's just nicely packaged. I'm really happy with how that's come together. So Starlink's been hard mounted into the canopy.
One Starlink bracket. It's gonna be pretty strong.
And basically we turn a switch on, Starlink fires up, and we've got internet wherever we go. So long as Elon keeps it running for mobile, we'll even have it while we're driving.
Right, so I'll run a piece from there.
This is starting to look like something, mate.
You actually caught me doing something, mate.
Yeah, that's a first.
I knew we were getting a big battery and 600 amp hours. So Ben, tell me, what are all of these blue boxes for?
Well, they're all very important. They all do individual things, but I guess that's the trick to it. When I say individual things, compared to the previous system, which was a 30 amp unit that does everything, so it does 240 charging, DC-DC charging, solar charging, pretty much the works, the monitoring,
Yes.
everything. These each individually take care of one area. Now, the beauty of that, obviously, is redundancy for one. But the big part that we're interested in is obviously with this 600 amp hour battery, if we were charging it off the 30 amp battery system you had before, even if it was a bright sunny day, driving along, you're driving along for 5-6 hours, you're only ever going to get 30 amps off that unit. Your solar might be giving you 30, and your alternator might be capable of 50, which you would think, there's 80 amps there. The system can only utilize 30 of it.
Okay.
By going the 230 amp solar controllers, it means each of the 400 watt arrays can provide all of their 400 watts, so almost 60 amps all up. And then with a 50 amp DC-DC charger on top of that, it means when you're driving along in the sun with 800 watts of solar, you could actually be charging at 110 amps an hour.
Wow.
Which
That's off engine and solar. Okay.
Almost 4 times as quick as you were before.
Yeah.
Which, when you have a battery that in terms of usable capacity is 10 times what you had before,
Wow.
Becomes very important.
But I can also charge this when I'm at home. I can plug it into my house.
Yes, you certainly can.
So hypothetically, say I had the engine running, the car was parked outside, had a bright sun on it.
Yep.
How much power could I put in if I was plugged into the house power?
Well, just off the battery charger, which is the mains, straight off the house, you're going to get another 120 amps. So you're actually looking at 120 plus 60 off the solar, so 180, plus a further 50 off the alternator, so 230 amps an hour compared to the 30 you were getting before. So
we've definitely gone up a realm, haven't we? So if this was dead flat,
yep,
in under 3 hours, in that hypothetical situation,
pretty unusual scenario.
Very, but theoretically, under 3 hours, I could charge this all the way up with that system.
Exactly right. This battery is designed to accept 250 amps of charge continuously.
Wow.
Yep.
Now, if I want to use that 600 amps, how hard can I use this system?
Yep, so this inverter here, we are going to be wiring it up on 95mm squared cable to allow for surging. This battery is capable of surging as well. But long story short, let's say you ran this at its rated limit, so 3000 VA. It's about 250 amps nearly. You could pretty much flatten this battery potentially in about 2.5 hours.
Yep.
But it'd take some serious doing to achieve that kind of...
I mean, that would be running a kettle, induction cooktop.
At the same time.
At the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
You're probably realistically never going to do that.
No, I don't think so. That's crazy. All right, thanks, Ben. I'm keen to see the finished product.
There you go. Look at that. Got to remember how that goes in and out.
So we could maximise the amount of power from the alternator in the engine bay. We've actually run new cabling from there right the way through to the canopy junction point at this Anderson plug here. That means that the DC to DC charger can do its job properly.
It's a long journey in here. They haven't let me out yet, not quite done.
I got blown away the amount of customizations Adam decided to put into the kit. Just the little logos and touches and stuff like that. I love how they've mounted the control panel up on the fridge door there, so Mrs. MadMatt can reach that really easy. I can reach it and see what's going on. All the connectivity that comes through on the app is just amazing. I love the peace of mind that we have that Ben can now log into the system from remote and deal with any issues that we may or may not be having. But we've just got that peace of mind. This system will work wherever we are, and if we have dramas, we've got support. There's numerous USB charging points, and they're USB-A and USB-C, so we can charge phones and all that, but more importantly, we can charge our camera gear. We made sure that there's 240-volt power at strategic points in the vehicle. When it comes to cooking, we've got a power point here so we can power that induction cooktop. And we've fitted up the Shervey LED light bars to the canopy that'll just give a really nice campsite light, but it won't be too intense so you can enjoy the campfire. The attention to detail and the way they've hidden all of the wiring so that it's behind paneling and just looks neat and finished. What also matters with that is it means that things aren't going to get bumped and knocked when we're loading and unloading the vehicle.
Keep coming. Here she is.
That's pretty good, man.
Full custom MadMatt setup.
And I'm not going to forget who I am. It's amazing. When we started this and there was that massive pile of boxes, I'm thinking, this is going to take up all of my space. Because for me, and I think I might have said this, for me, this is such usable space for when we're working out of the vehicle.
100%.
And I'm looking at all the stuff and I'm thinking, I'm going to lose too much space. Honestly, I don't think I've lost any.
I don't think you have lost any at all. So
No,
pretty much you can put all your stuff back in there, but now you can actually charge some stuff, and you're not going to be short on power, that's for sure.
No, I'm not.
Definitely not.
And this for us is, you know, just having all of these charge ports here, the 240 volt here, you know, we can charge it. It's just going to be fantastic. And I love the personal touches. Mrs. MadMatt was absolutely blown away by the fridge and the way it ties with the wrap of the vehicle.
100%.
It comes through, just totally unnecessary.
That's what we do.
But it
well.
just totally blows us away. It's
That's
great.
it.
So, thanks, mate.
No
really
worries.
appreciate it.
Can I say it, Matt?
Yeah, go on.
All right. Stay safe on the trails. I'm Adam.
Well done, mate. Well done.
Oh, we'll get there.